Hello everyone, good afternoon. In today's video, I am talking about are you afraid to connect? And this is about how the things avoidance do to avoid connection. So if this is your first time watching me live, my name is Joanna Daniel. I'm a trauma-informed counselor and I'm founder of Wounts to Scars, where we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. So I'm talking about are you afraid to connect? The things that avoidance do to avoid connection. And there are different things that might happen throughout the course of life that may make us struggle with connection, may make us fear connection. Welcome. I can see that somebody's on. That make us fear connection. So I'm going to talk about what are the things that our avoidance do to avoid connection. So what is avoidant? Who are avoidants? I'm going to talk about who are avoidants first. I'm just looking at my notes. So avoidants are people who didn't receive sensitive care and responses from parents or caregivers, in order to meet their needs. So when we don't receive sensitive care and responses from caregivers to meet our needs, what we tend to do is go inwards. And so we go inwards to look after ourselves. And so we grow up really capable, really efficient, afraid to share our needs with anyone or to indeed allow anyone in too close to see that we have a need. Sometimes people who are avoidant is unaware of their own needs because they're afraid that if those needs are shown, nobody's going to meet them. And so avoidants learn how to hide, learn how to internalize, learn how to pretend that they don't have needs. And they tend to avoid emotional closeness in relationships as a result. They cope with difficulties and difficult situations alone. And avoidants tend to suppress feelings. So if we think about how our connection works, we have to be vulnerable, we have to be open, we have to be honest. We have to do all of those things that avoidance would fear because there's no blueprint. There is no experience of connection. And so avoidance would fear connection as a result. Now, they also won't tell you when something is wrong. And so, relationships won't function healthily if somebody's not able to tell you when something is wrong. When something goes wrong and I can't tell you that this has happened, then that might make a relationship difficult. That might make a relationship difficult. So avoidance fear connecting because of the past, because of the experience that they have with parents and caregivers. So they fear connecting, they fear going in relationships, and they fear not just emotional closeness, but they also fear physical closeness sometimes. Sometimes there's a problem with allowing people to get close in any kind of way. So if you recognize yourself as displaying these things in relationships, sometimes there's a push-pull. You want to have relationships, but you're afraid of, will these people commit to me? Will these people love me? Because sometimes the underlying message that avoidance received when parents and caregivers couldn't meet their needs was, I'm not lovable. And therefore, avoidance would grow up believing that they're not good enough. And because they're not good enough and they're not lovable, and that's why people won't connect. And so in order to protect self, avoidance go inwards in order to protect self, to avoid people reinforcing that feeling of I'm not good enough. You're not worthy of connection and I don't want to be with you. So if an avoidant go in a relationship, in a marriage, and the marriage break down and there's a divorce, that might reinforce the I'm not good enough feeling. And there might be a struggle to enjoy healthy relationships because there's a repeat of a pattern and of a cycle of people who fail to meet your emotional needs, reinforcing the I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable ideas. Now, I'm explaining just like really basic of what avoidance experience and who an avoidant is. If you see yourself in this explanation, if you experience yourself as an avoidant, somebody who is, your emotional needs were not met, you had physical needs that were met, like you had clothing and a shelter. Some people had, some didn't. But if your physical needs were met, but your emotional needs were not met, there was nobody who hugged you when you cry. There was nowhere to go to talk about bullying at school, or the kids that were mean to you in the community, the neighbor that was mean to you. You know, those little things when you fall off your bike and you bruise your knee, then there's nobody to call in the middle of the night when you were ill. You know, that kind of, those kind of emotional needs, when we didn't have anybody to meet those or minister to them, then we learn how to take care of ourselves. And when we're learning how to take care of ourselves, then it's very difficult to let other people in, because the what the brain will tell us is, because all of our experiences will be held in that frame. The stories that will inform our lives and how we do relationships will be informed by the experiences of our needs not being met. And so, in order to change that story, to understand it, to tackle it, to reframe it, to learn how to understand that narrative, the trauma narrative, and to change it, is to get into safe spaces where you can work through that. So there's a problem with connecting because there was no connection in early life. Now, tomorrow I'm going to talk about why avoidance and anxious attachment, people tend to get together in relationships, and what's going on there. What's the dynamic that's happening between the two? I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. But for now, some later experiences in life, as I said earlier, that can reinforce this feeling, this view, and kind of make the template more ingrained in your life, is breakdown in relationships. People who you knew and felt you trusted and they hurt you. People who, if you were married and the relationship breakdown. The thing with avoidance are, sometimes you might find that you sabotage your relationships to get you quickly to that place where you feel you're going to get to anyway, to reinforce the view that people won't meet my needs. When I do workshops and do the relational style wheel, teaching people how to express their needs in their families or with their partner or with their children, it's a really challenging one, because when avoidance are in the room, avoidants tend to sometimes don't even know what their needs are, because they're so used to suppressing it, that knowing what it is and being able to express in it is very difficult. So if that's you, you might need help to go find out what are my needs, and feel even that you're worthy of those needs being met. You might be efficient, you might be capable, you might be great at task, you might have climbed the career ladder or is doing amazing in your business, because sometimes those are some of the ways that avoidance used to cope, by becoming very, very efficient and capable. However, you might find a deficit in really close, intimate relationships. Some of your relationships might compromise of people needing you, but there's no emotional closeness. There might be you might find that you have lots of surface relationships where nobody knows you, nobody knows your needs, and you don't know theirs either. You might be happy meeting other people's physical needs. You might be happy making a meal, giving money, buying clothes, providing accommodation. You might be happy doing those things, but you might not be so happy if somebody says, I'm really in distress, can you come and sit with me? Or if something has happened in your life and you feel, I want to go sit with her, you might not be so open to allow anybody in. Sometimes people might experience big events in life, and you might reach out to them and say, for the avoidance in your life, they might experience big events in life, and you might reach out to them and say, how are you doing? And in the community where I work, mostly in the Christian community, there'll be a God is good, there'll be a scripture, there'll be a Bible verse or a prayer or a quote or something that avoids the question of how are you doing, how do you feel. There might be ways to avoid that. And when I'm in my retreats, or when I'm working in groups, or even with my one-to-one, and I says, how are you? And I tend to say to people, don't answer with your head, answer with your heart. Tell me what you're feeling when I say, how are you? And so that's one way for yourself to to begin to gauge where you are and how you're feeling when people try to connect with you that way. How am I feeling? What is it like for me when this person is pursuing me and want to have connection and it scares me? So experiences like people leaving might reinforce, as I say, the view that nobody wants to be with me, nobody loves me. So here's a way to heal for avoidance. First is to an acknowledgement is important that this is me. I experience difficulty to connect. I'm afraid to connect. I struggle with intimate relationships. I'm great with surface relationships, but I would like intimate relationships. I would like to have friendships that are deep and meaningful. I would like to experience what that's like. And I know that it's going to require something of me that I can't give. One of the first things to do is to understand and recognize that. I want you to know that attachment wounds like avoidant can heal, and you can learn how to have secure, connected relationships, maybe not with the world, but with the people who are meaningful to you, the people in your life who love you and you love them, and you want to draw them closer, or they want to allow them closer, or how to have deep connected relationships with them. So also, you need to change your belief system about yourself. Your parents, your caregivers didn't not meet your needs because you weren't worthy, you weren't valid or valued. It wasn't anything to do with you. Their deficits didn't give them room to meet your emotional needs. That's not your fault. And so it's important to know that for yourself, to tell yourself that, to change that belief system about yourself. If you're at the stage in life where you want to stop doing this push pull, you want to stop moving away, and you want to learn how to have healthy, close relationships, it might mean that you might need to start with changing your belief system altogether, revamping it, recreating it for yourself so you can learn to know more about yourself, understand yourself, embrace who you know, accept the you that you are, and that's a place to move on from. So those are some of the ways avoidance struggle, and those are some of the things that might be present while you're afraid to connect. Join me tomorrow where I'm going to talk about how anxious and avoidant people, why they come together in relationships, and some of the problems that they might experience and the ways to overcome those. Thank you for joining. I'll see you tomorrow.